All right, so this was another one of the most missed questions. Number 11, so we have psychologists observing a shopping mall parking lot found that, on average, drivers spent 39 seconds leaving a parking space when another car was quietly waiting to enter it. Okay, so whenever we're trying to leave our parking spot, if another car is waiting, it took us 39 seconds to leave. 51 seconds if the driver of the waiting car honked impatiently. Okay, so I'm envisioning someone like, hey, like, hurry, get out of the spot. I need that spot. So it took more time whenever there was someone honking rather than just waiting, but only 32 seconds leaving a space when no one was waiting. Okay, so real quick, just like looking at these numbers, I'm like, okay, so why, whenever there was nobody waiting, was it a shorter amount of time? This suggests that drivers feel possessive of their parking spaces even when leaving them, and that this possessiveness increases in reaction to indications that another driver wants the space. All right, so this is an argument or set of facts. It's an argument. And what is our conclusion? It's this idea that drivers feel possessive of their parking spaces even when leaving them, and that this possessiveness increases in reaction to indications that another drivers want that space. So I'm gonna ask myself, do I think that this is a valid argument? Do I think that this is rock solid? And like, just from my own experience, like, I don't necessarily think that I'm possessive of my parking spot whenever someone's waiting. I think what this is saying is like, hey, the more jerk you are to me, the more likely I'm just gonna sit around and waiting. But I know for me, like, I tend to get like more nervous whenever there's pressure of anything. And so if someone's sitting there honking, like, I can just see myself like just so afraid to do anything, so I just won't do anything. And I'm gonna go ahead and read the question type now. So it says, which of the following, if true, most weakens the argument? Well, if we're doing a weekend question, we're looking for strong wording, but I'm gonna loosely predict my answer choice. And so I'm thinking, is there anything that I can say that would weaken that, hey, we're not possessive? And for this, I'm thinking that maybe like an alternative explanation, which might explain why we have the differences in these times. It's not because we're possessive, but for another reason. And maybe I'm gonna go with like people just don't perform well under pressure, but we'll go ahead and see. So yeah, once again, this is a weekend questions. We're gonna look for strong wording, and our answer choice, we can pick whatever we want and we get to add it as a premise. But remember, our goal is to weaken our conclusion. So always look through it through the eyes of the conclusion. And we're trying to weaken the idea that drivers feel possessive of their parking spaces. So how can we show that this is not? How can we weaken that? A, the more pressure so more than 50% of most drivers feel because others are waiting for them to perform maneuvers with a car, the less likely they are able to perform them. Yes, I love this answer choice, because it's essentially saying that the more pressure a driver feels, the less quick they're able to perform the task. That is me in any parking lot for sure. B, the amount of time drivers spend entering a parking space. Okay, so already I don't like this one because it's saying entering a parking space. We're not talking about entering, we're talking about leaving. Is not noticeably affected by whether other drivers are waiting for them to do so, nor by whether those other drivers, yeah, that's irrelevant. C, it is considerably more difficult and time-consuming for a driver to maneuver a car out of a parking space if another car is waiting to enter that space nearby. I think C is a tempting wrong answer, and I'm sure several students selected it, but the reason that it's incorrect is I like how it's saying that it's more difficult and time-consuming to maneuver a car out of a parking space if another car is waiting. So I'm envisioning, like, yeah, like if you see another car that's behind you, you want to make sure you're not going to hit it, so you're going to take your time. But what makes this answer choice wrong is it doesn't explain why do we take longer when someone's honking versus just waiting. We need something that shows why there's a difference between those two things to really weaken that it's not because we're possessive of our parking spot. If this was the case that it was just because another car is there, wouldn't whether someone honking or not be irrelevant and they would just be the same amount of time? D, parking spaces in shopping mall parking lots are unrepresentative of parking spaces in general with respect to the likelihood that other cars will be waiting to enter them. Okay, even if they are unrepresentative of parking spaces in general, that doesn't weaken our conclusion to this argument that we're possessive. And we don't really care about the likelihood that other cars will be waiting to enter them, because in our situation, there are cars, and this is the study, so we're trying to weaken this argument. We don't care about the likelihood. E, almost any driver leaving a parking space will feel angry at another driver who honks impatiently, and this anger will influence the amount of time. Okay, so E actually, hopefully everybody crossed that one off. That would actually strengthen our argument. If you did select that one, maybe you were trying to answer this one as a strengthen question and you missed that it was a weaken. All right, I hope that this helps.